for having me today. We're going to do, today's a very broad overview of finances. We're going to talk a little bit about goal setting, looking at budgeting, and then we'll also discuss a little on student loans and credit. All right, and we have 45 minutes, so as we go through, if there's specific questions, please feel free to ask, but at the end we will stay after, and if you have more in-depth questions, we are here for you and to answer them. So what I would encourage you to do is to sit down and think about having your goals, these three things: very specific, measurable, and reasonable. So let's say you have $5,000, or you want to save $5,000, or you want to pay off your debt. That's $5,000. Now, in this scenario, we're not including interest rates, so just keep that in mind. But this gives you a very specific number. So we have specific number, $5,000. Maybe it's $30,000. Maybe it's $10,000. Whatever that number is, you want to write it down. Then you want a time frame. Let's say 2 years. All right? So we're going to take that 5,000 and divide it by 24. So how much do you need to save each month? That's $208 a month. We're going to divide that by, let's say you get paid twice a month. So you're looking at $104 per paycheck. And let's break that up per week. So this $5,000 goal within 2 years just became $52 a week. Right? So you can do this, if this was $10,000 in 2 years, your weekly would be $104. So you're looking at, okay, if this is $10,000, $5,000 is my goal, and I have to save $52 or $104 a week. What are my two options to getting that money, to getting the $52 extra, to getting the $104 extra? Two options are to make more money or spend less money, right? So looking at those opportunities, maybe this is working an extra shift, or looking at where your budget, where you can pull this $52. But having those specific goals, even with, I know student loans is probably one of your topics that you're very interested in. Having that specific plan and knowing what it looks like depending on how much you pay back. And right now there are so many different student loan repayment programs out there that you can take advantage of, and we'll touch base. But basically, okay, obviously if you make more money, it's getting an extra job. For me, like, I teach at Longwood, a personal finance class, as an adjunct there, because I have a son who's graduated and is in college and doing some other things, and I want to help him. So for me, it was easier to make more money than spend less money. I don't know about you, but if you want to spend less money, you really need to take a step back and analyze your expenses. And you do this through budgeting. So there's two parts to a budget: income versus expenses. And obviously the goal is not to spend more money than what is coming in. So I gave you all a couple of budget sheets in front of you. If you want to take a look. One is blank, and then one, did you get them to me? And then one has a job with a salary on it, all right? So the blank one is yours. We're going to work through a mock scenario budget with the one that you have as a specific job with a salary. Everybody with me? Yeah, okay. So, for example, this one's a lawyer, gross $127,000 a year, per month $10,000, net $7,000. So when you're creating a budget, you always want to create it off of your net monthly pay. So not your gross, but your net, what you're actually getting to keep after the taxes are taken out. All right, so the first thing is that personal finance experts would tell you, and part of this financial plan, and this can lend itself to your goals, is to pay yourself first. That would be the personal savings component. And great if you can pay more than 10%, but 10% is kind of the rule of thumb. And this really could include, like, if your work offers your 401k, you're putting money into savings through retirement and things like that. But 10%, we're gonna say, is going to come off of your net. So I would like you to take 10% of your net pay and put that into personal savings, all right? You can, if you need a calculator, use your phones, it's fine. So net times 0.1, 10%, or just move your decimal over. So my net is $7,000, I would say $700 right off the bat. So this money automatically goes into some sort of savings venue, whether it's retirement, whether it's a savings account for a particular vacation or whatever your goals are, putting that aside so you don't have it. Now, how many of you put money into savings and then just go transfer it back over? Yeah. So that is a problem. And one of the things that you might think about is having a savings account separate, in a separate place from where you do your everyday banking. And you can automatically deposit that. Let's say if you're in a savings account for Virginia Credit Union, you can deposit a portion of your salary directly into that with direct deposit, and then if you bank somewhere else, you can still save, but it puts an extra step in that process to where it's not as easy to transfer that money, and therefore it's just out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. Also, there are things like savings certificates or CDs. Banks call them CDs, credit unions call them savings certificates. What these are, they will give you a little bit more interest than a regular savings account. However, your money is locked in for a certain span of time. So the longer you lock it in, the higher the interest rate that you might receive off of that CD or savings certificate. But the idea is if you need that money, you would have, there would be a slap on the wrist for you to access that money. So not only is it kind of locked in, but you're earning a little bit more interest than you would on just a regular savings account. So just a couple of options there if you're looking at paying yourself first. Then housing. In general, a third of your income, no more than a third of your net income should be allocated for your housing. So if you want to take your net and divide it by 3, and that's going to give you an approximate amount that you could take and put toward a mortgage or toward rent. So in mortgages, there's really 4 components. There's your principal, like what you borrowed and you're paying back, interest, what the financial institution is charging you, taxes, and insurance. It's called the PITI principle. All 4 of those things would be in that 1/3 rule, that 1/3 guideline. So you get your dream job. They say, okay, we're going to give you this amount of money. You're netting, let's say, $3,000 a month. You want to apartment shop for something in the $1,000 range. Kind of gives you that guideline. So even before, personal finance is all about making good choices and setting yourself up before you get in a bad situation to do the right thing. So staying within that 1/3 guideline is a really good rule of thumb, regardless of whatever your salary is. And then, putting in the rest of those expenses. And then car payments. Thinking about making that plan for getting your initial car. $30,000 to $40,000 is a really tough bracket when it comes to salaries, and a lot of jobs are within that beginning range. So you really need to budget well if you're starting off in that 30 to 40 range. Even 40 to 50 can be a little tight. And obviously, when you apply for loans, like mortgages or car loans, and they're looking at your salary, they're looking at your gross. So they're looking at what you get before taxes or anything else is taken out. So what you might qualify for might be more than you can really afford. So this is where it's good to have that plan before you even walk into the dealer, before you sit down with the loan officer, to know exactly what monthly you can afford. So So at the end of the day, you would start with your savings account, add everything up, total it, total all your expenses. Now think of savings as an expense. You're paying yourself. So you're going to start with your savings account, add everything up, and then take that and subtract it from your net to see how much you have left over. And this is where, if you're searching for this extra $52 a month, you can really dig out where that might come from. So is it cutting back? Is it a gym membership and you walk instead? Or is it cutting back? What are the things that you can cut back? If you write it down, you can therefore go back and analyze it. What most of us do is we get our paycheck, we pay some bills, and before the end of the month, we're out of money. We're like, why am I broke? I have no money, why? And if you write it down, at least you can go back and see why that is. Now, let's talk a little bit about credit. So credit is very important when it comes to buying houses, having a car, getting a credit card, all of those types of things. And when you become an adult, these three bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, start tracking you. Now, you have to have some sort of credit history for 6 months to even start getting a score in the first place. So you can be 20, but you've never taken out a credit card or a loan or anything, you would have no credit score. You would have to start and get in the system for about 6 months, and then it would happen. But these three bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, are the credit bureaus. And what happens is when you come in to apply for a loan, a car loan, or a mortgage, we're going to pull your credit from one or all of these bureaus to see what kind of history you have. If you have a good score, we're going to be like, poof, here's $25,000, go buy a car. If you have a bad score, you're like, no, or I'm going to charge you a lot of interest on that particular loan because you're a higher risk to me. Your credit score ranges, and this is the FICO model. There are different models out there. So when you pull your credit, you would want to ask for the FICO model. This is what most financial institutions use. So it's going to range from 300 to 850. Obviously, the higher the score, the better off you're going to be. And when you initially start, you have nothing. Once you get started and you're paying your bill on time, all of that good stuff, you'll be around probably 620, 600, something like that once you initially get on the board. Keep in mind, people report to the three credit bureaus throughout the month on your activity. So your score can definitely vary depending on what's being reported and when it's being reported as well. These are the different factors that are reported to the bureaus. So the number one factor is payment history. And each of these bureaus, if you and I'm going to give you some websites where you can actually go and pull your own credit, but your credit report will look differently depending on which bureau you pull it from. But the information is generally the same, it's just the way it looks is a bit different. But the number one thing that all of them really emphasizes is payment history. Are you paying your bills on time? There are certain bills that are not going to be reported in a positive, but could be reported in a negative light. For example, rent. You can pay your rent on time every month for a year, 2 years, and it will not help your credit. Your landlord is not reporting that you paid your rent on time. You're late on your rent, they can report that. So you're 1 month late, 2 months late, they can report that to the landlord. They have that right, which would hurt your credit. So those types of bills don't necessarily help build your credit, but they can hurt your credit. What bills do help build your credit? That would be loans, credit cards, student loans are on there, all of those types of consumer type of loans. So you get a car loan, you pay your payment on your car loan every month. That's going to help your credit score because that shows you paying on time. Keep in mind the most recent weighs the most. So if you were late just this last month, it's probably gonna hit you a little bit harder than if you were late like last year on your car payment. And when people report, it's not always like right away. It could be a grace period of a little bit, but it differs depending on who the loan is with. Yes?
I don't know if this is true, but paying off your credit card doesn't matter if you're paying like the minimum versus the whole thing every month. Is it still helping your credit?
Yes, well, it is helping your credit,
Okay.
okay, regardless, as long as you're making that payment on time.
Uh-huh.
What you want to be careful of, though, is this next area, capacity. So if you're maxing out your credit card and then paying it off every month, that actually could hurt you because they are looking at your capacity load. You're utilizing it too much.
Okay.
All right, so it's okay to do that if you're utilizing it 30 to 40%, maybe
Okay.
50%. So, you know, if you can borrow $1,000, don't borrow more than about 400.
Okay.
Okay, and then you can pay it off. Or,
Okay.
okay, but yeah, so that lends itself to capacity. Don't max out your credit cards.
What if you're paying them, like, you know, I have a Lowe's card, put $300 on there, built a deck, paid it off that month. I mean, is that good, bad, because you don't have anything on there? The opposite problem, I guess?
Because
you don't have anything
Because you don't
on there.
have, well, it's still usage, so
Okay.
that's still okay. As long as you're not maxing it out on that usage.
It's just paid off every month, so there's no interest ever or anything. So does that show up as even
Yeah,
having
yeah.
stuff on there?
Have you, yes.
Okay.
Yes. 15% is length of credit history, so they're looking at what is your relationship, how long have you had that credit card. I've had a credit card since I was like 19, and when I called the credit card company, they were like, oh, Ms. Hedges, you've been a member a really long time. So I wouldn't want to close that credit card out. I use that credit card and pay it off, but because I have such a long credit history, it really actually helps my score in the long run. So, you know, and first of all, there's a time to worry about your score and a time to just kind of let it ride, but not do anything to hurt it. If you're getting ready to buy a car or getting ready to buy a home, those are two really important times to focus in on your credit. But if you're just kind of going through school, you're not getting ready to buy a car or a house or anything, you know, the best thing is just managing it, paying your bills on time, not maxing it out, and developing this length of credit history. 10% is new credit, so every time you actually apply for credit, it's called what we say a hard hit. So there's two types of hits on credit. There's hard hit versus soft hit. Hard hits will impact your credit score by a few points. Soft hits do not. If you pull your own credit, that is a soft hit. It's not going to hurt your credit. If you go to a dealer and they pull your credit, that's a hard hit. Now, let's say you go shopping and you go to 3 different dealers within a certain time span, let's say 30 days or so. The system is coded so it knows you're shopping around, so that would actually count as one hit, right? But if you apply, let's say, for multiple credit cards, that would be multiple hits, okay? Same thing goes with mortgages. You can kind of shop around for your mortgage rate, different companies within a certain amount of time, and it would count as one hit. When you pull your credit, one of the very last things on your credit report would be inquiries from other people on your credit that you didn't necessarily ask them to do that. So you get a pre-approval in the mail. What they've probably done is soft hit your credit, took a look at it, and based upon that information, gave you a pre-approval. That has to be documented, and that's documented on your credit report. That does not hurt your credit score. It's a soft hit. And you can opt out of those types of things if you're not comfortable with that, with the credit bureaus. And then they're looking at types of credit use. So they're looking at, do you have a student loan, car loan, mortgage, what type of credit do you have? Is it a good mix? So all of those things give you your little score, and then people judge you on it, which is good or bad. Student loan, just like any other type of loan, you've got to pay it back. Most of you are probably in grad school at this point. Is that correct? So you are dealing with unsubsidized loans if you have a student loan, because they don't do subsidized loans for grad school. Some of you have deferred undergrad loans on, and what you need to be aware of with those deferred undergrad loans is looking at what the interest rate on those loans were while you were in school. Because keep in mind that interest rates change, and really recently they've been going down. 7 years ago when I was doing this, presenting a class like this, I think they were up like at 6.9 student loan rates were at that point. So a lot higher now, way down. But they still might vary depending on when you took that student loan out. So you want to know what interest rate you're being charged. When you get ready to move on, graduating, what you're going to do is consolidate all of those loans. So when you pull your credit, I'm just warning you, don't get overwhelmed if you have student loans, because usually each loan is going to be, if it's got a very different interest rate, it's going to be a line item in it itself. So I've had folks pull their credit and they have like 12 different student loans on there because they've taken out student loans each semester. And a subsidized and unsubsidized loan, those are two loans during that one semester. Does that make sense? So don't get overwhelmed if you pull your credit and you've got all these student loans. What happens is, once you get ready to graduate, you'll meet with your financial aid office, you can go online. You will take out one loan, consolidate all of those other loans into one loan with one interest rate. And since your interest rate varies, depending on when you took it out, the rule of thumb is looking at what is the lowest interest rate, which is probably going to be the 3.76, because this is the lowest the interest rates have been. And then usually go 1% above that. So you would lock into a consolidated loan at 4.76 for all of your loans together. So maybe you have one at 5%, then your lowest is 3.7, somewhere in the middle. But they'll look at all of those and consolidate it into one loan. Now when I was in school, they did not have the student loan forgiveness programs, but they do now, which is awesome, and especially if you guys are in healthcare, all of that. So I would definitely meet with somebody or go online, fill out the paperwork. In my research, what it showed was the main thing in order to qualify, and you're turning in your tax returns and things like that, but you cannot be in default on your student loan. If your student loan gets into default, you're not going to qualify. It's going to disqualify you for the student loan forgiveness programs. So this is something you really want to stay on top of. And when you graduate, have that repayment program set up for, maybe it's income-based based upon what you're bringing in at the time, for the standard amount of time. Whether it's some programs are 5 years, some programs are 10 years. But you've got to be consistently making your student loan payment on time and not allow it to go delinquent within those 5 to 10 years, or that's going to disqualify you from student loan forgiveness. So making sure, this is where personal finance is so important, and having a budget and making sure you're paying that bill on time each month, so you don't disqualify yourself for potentially student loan forgiveness. Yeah. Now, private student loans, if you have a private student loan, let's say from Wells Fargo or Chase or something like that, I would definitely look into that and make sure that a lot of times those private student loans will give you the same interest rate that the government-backed student loans have, but then there might be a cutoff date to where the interest rate gets jacked up. So that's, you really want to make sure that you know what you're signing off on those private student loans. We're just going to touch base on a couple of different ways that you could look at having your money help you make money. And of course, having goals and a savings account is important. Looking at your 401k. If you're going into healthcare, I'm sure a lot of the different hospitals and such have retirement if your organization that you work for does not have a 401k retirement program, or even at this point, if you guys wanted to open up your own retirement fund, you can do that at any credit union, any financial institution. You can go in and it's called an IRA, so it's an individual retirement account. And you can just open it up $50, put $25, $50 in there every single month. It's going toward your retirement. You meet with an advisor, they would tell you what kind of portfolio your money would go into, depending on where you go. But that way you are putting something aside for retirement. And those IRAs, if you open up an individual, a lot of times if you do get on with a hospital organization, you can roll it over into your 401k. Or vice versa, if you leave an organization, you can roll over what you have with an organization into another 401k or an IRA plan. Matching, if your organization ever matches what you put in, that's awesome. You want to take advantage of that. And stocks and bonds and all of these things, you can put your retirement account into what you want, or you can do it yourself as well. I have a financial planner that and a 401k and all of that, but then I kind of play with the stock market through online. So there's this one, there's E-Trade, there's lots of different stock portfolio places that you can go to buy stock, sell stock, trade stock, all of that good stuff. I use this particular one, and so I have an account directly linked to my checking account, so I can go online and buy shares of companies, sell, trade, all of that good stuff, for example. So once you set up an account, Apple's shares right now, keep in mind when you buy shares, you're owner of the company, so there is risk involved with any type of share that you have or that you own. But if I wanted to buy Apple at a couple $100, I could buy some other shares of Apple. Keep in mind, these different online venues make money off of charging you per trade. So you want to be wary of buying and selling and all of that good stuff, because that's how they make their money. But you can look and kind of see overall what each company is doing, take that risk. One of the things I bought Walmart stock on here, and I actually ended up buying, because I wasn't paying attention, I bought Mexico Walmart. And so later on, and it turned out Mexico Walmart was actually doing better than American Walmart at that point in time, so it kind of worked out. But you just want to make sure that you're purchasing what you want, and you can sell, you can trade, all of that good stuff. We talked a little bit about the different types of savings venues. Regular savings accounts are going to give you a minimal amount of interest. However, they're good to have. Money market savings accounts, these are great for large sums of money. So let's say you got $5,000 from Sally and you wanted to earn more interest than a regular savings account, but you didn't want to lock in your money into a savings certificate or a CD. You could put it into a money market account and you wouldn't get penalized for getting it, you just wouldn't get the interest rate on it. So interest rates are higher on money market accounts versus regular savings account, but they're for larger sums of money. Whereas CD savings certificates, you can open up them with smaller sums. If you ever meet with a financial advisor, they're going to assess your risk and look at what you're comfortable with. So you are young, a lot of financial advisors, and let me just say I'm not a financial advisor, so I teach personal finance, but you're young, you have a lot of time, so if the stock market takes dips and turns and stuff, you have time to recover from that. So aggressive would be more stocks, a little bit of bonds. Bonds, you are basically essentially lending the company money. Stocks, you're owner of the company. So if the company ever goes out of business, liquidates, bondholders get reimbursed first before shareholders do. So there's a little bit less risk with bonds, and they seem to counteract as well as the market's going on. So looking at that, and then 10% will be your cash savings, things like that. And then balance would be similar to this, and then more conservative. So it's really great. It's about continuing articles. So if you guys have more specific questions about any of the topics, credit, investing, loans, credit cards, all of those things, that's a great resource. Of course, because you attend VCU or part of VCU, you are eligible to join Virginia Credit Union, so keep this in mind. We are a not-for-profit financial cooperative, and we serve our members. Our goal is to help them get ahead financially, and part of that is giving financial literacy education to the